Welcome back, everyone, on the other side of the screen. So we continue with the session with my 5 colleagues that you can see here behind me. And the 6 of us are representing the procuring partners or the buyers group of FABULOS. But before I do the introductions and we talk more, we have video testimonials from some of our politicians. So please start the video and we have a look at that first.
In the city of Helmond, we are very lucky to have 4 railway stations. This is unique for a city of our size with about 100,000 inhabitants. We are therefore proud of the very good connections by public transport with other cities in the Netherlands. But of course our citizens and visitors do not want to travel only from one station to another station. They want to reach the final destination, such as their place of work, the hospital or a school. Especially for these kind of so-called first and last mile trips, we believe that automated shuttles could be a solution in future to come to flexible, safe and sustainable mobility services. Cities of our size, of course, do not have the need and number of passengers for tramlines or high-frequency large buses. But smaller automated electric shuttles, as we have seen in the FABULOS project, could exactly be what we need. It is clear, and this is also an important result of the FABULOS project, that it is not for tomorrow yet. We learned a lot from the other cities and experts in the project. At least it made clear for us which steps still have to be taken before all our citizens and visitors can enjoy the benefits of this kind of new technology. The FABULOS project has been an important step towards real implementation of these kind of shuttles in the next coming years. Not only in Helmond, but in our broader Brainport region and beyond. Of course, we still will have challenges before we get there. But through FABULOS project, we now are in contact with the leading cities and experts in this domain to work on these challenges.
Dear ladies and gentlemen, the FABULOS project has helped to really support the development of autonomous vehicles in Estonia. During this project, Estonian companies also got a great opportunity to test their solution in Greece. Although Estonia has had self-driving vehicle pilots already before FABULOS project, this was the first time for us to give type approval to individual so-called ise-autos. This is a true legal innovation. In the process, the Estonian Road Administration firstly checked whether the vehicles are up to the European Type Approval, Directive M1 category, after which closed territory tests were made and only then could the vehicles go for the driving test, to be allowed to operate on the streets. As we have heard from the company, our example was of great help also the Greek authorities to allow the vehicles to be tested in Larnia. The FABULOS route in Ülemiste in Tallinn was the most complex we have had for an autonomous bus. For example, crossings with pedestrians and tram lines in mixed traffic. This shows the ambition and the results of the project. FABULOS project was a great example how the public sector can direct innovation where it's most needed. We are really looking forward to the full maturation of the technology. For the public transport authorities could then procure these solutions to work side by side with normal public transportation. Have a great conference and stay safe.
The FABULOS pilot marks an important milestone for the city of Lamia in its steady transition towards becoming a smart city of the future. We, as a municipality, genuinely believe that self-driving vehicles, sustainable mobility and environmentally friendly modes of transport are the only way forward to achieve the evolution into a sustainable, prosperous, modern, competitive and climate-neutral economy of the city and the EU in general. In this context, we are proud that Lamia had the opportunity to test in real conditions such a complex mobility ecosystem for the first time in the country. We are also proud that the city and the project have been pivotal in achieving a much-needed legislation update, modernizing the regulatory framework according to the current state of the art. We would like to thank the citizens of Lamia, all local and regional stakeholders, our FABULOS partners, and the great Estonian Consortium for making this project a reality. We are confident that the Lamia pilot was an important step in the maturation process of the AV sector. In this context, we are already preparing interesting following up projects towards this direction. We are sure that we will meet again soon in new innovative technology endeavors.
Hello there, I'm Frode Fjellsbø, a very, very proud mayor. Why proud? Because we have had autonomous cars driving in the little town of Ålgård. Thus we've shown the tremendous opportunities that we think autonomous driving can offer to us in the future. This particular kind of innovative pre-commercial procurement has been very interesting to take part in. We've learned a lot and we've gained confidence. I think that we will look for future partners to take this even a further step. So we are grateful and thankful and looking forward to doing something like this even once more. Thank you.
Yes, and we're back. We have been really lucky in FABULOS to have received overwhelming political support, and this was really one of the big drivers of the project as well, especially in cities in countries where there's maybe more complicated permission process. In Greece or in the Netherlands, for example, the field testing basically could not have been done without full and active support of the city. So we're really also grateful to all the politicians, the mayor and the vice mayors that we saw in the video for their support, because has been invaluable. We'll speak about that soon a little bit more. Back to my group of colleagues here. I would like to introduce them to you. So if we start from left to right, we have Marcel Unterberg from the municipality of Helmond in the Netherlands. Hi, Marcel. Next to him on the screen is Fotis Kogolus from the municipality of Lamia in Greece, and Trond Hansen from the municipality of Gjesdal in Norway. And then Johan Petre from the Ministry of Economic Affairs and Communications in Estonia. And last but not least, Carlos Abreu from the Porto Public Transport Association, public transport operator in Porto in Portugal. Yeah, so that's our team. And then there's me as well from the side of Forum Virim Helsinki. So the six of us were the so-called procuring partners or buyers group. But to be really clear, we didn't buy vehicles. We, with the funding from the side of the European Commission, provided budget for the companies to carry out R&D, to develop something beyond the state of the art. We really wanted to push the innovation. It was to be a prototype solution or some off-the-shelf autonomous shuttle service that's not yet on the market as such. And because we are going to speak soon a little bit more about also the process and this type of procurement, I have a slide to show you. So we leave my colleagues for just a second and we come back and then have the panel discussion after. So I have here one slide with the process we've been through in the past 3 years. Because the fact that this is a pre-commercial procurement and not a regular project, so to say, it really defined everything we did. It's more or less a standardized process in these very clear phases. So we started back in 2018 with the market consultation, not only the market, also potential other buyers. And we wanted to formulate, on the one hand, get very clear that what's the need from the procurer side, and on the other hand, to get a really clear picture of the state of the art in the market, because we knew we needed to be ambitious, very ambitious. But of course, it's also no use asking kind of too overly ambitious things that no one could do anyway. So this was 2018. And then we opened the tender. We selected 5 consortia who then designed their solution in phase 1, which was more like a paperwork exercise. Again, an evaluation process. 1 consortium was dropped and 4 consortia continued to this prototype development and testing phase in lab conditions or kind of closed area conditions. So mind you, not only the vehicle, right? So the entire solution, the software, the hardware, the fleet management, charging, maintenance, kind of the whole service, so to say. And again, there was an evaluation phase by us, by the procuring partners. 1 consortium dropped out, and the group of 3 consortia that you heard from in this morning, they proceeded to this last phase, the field testing. And of course, this was the kind of cherry on the cake, if you want. They were tested in real life conditions in our cities, with the exception of Porto in Portugal. We wanted each consortium to carry out 2 field tests in 2 different countries because it was important to us that they could show the scalability of the solution. And I mean, despite the whole COVID situation and despite that it wasn't easy, we're actually extremely proud that this has happened as well. I have one more slide. It's about the characteristics that all the pilots shared. So in summary, very shortly, to kind of sketch the framework in which we operated, all the pilots we've had operated in mixed traffic conditions. They operated in 30-40 kilometer-hour zones, in some cases even higher, but then the speed limit was temporarily brought down. The routes 2.5 to 4.5 kilometers, so really, well, not even last 2 miles as well, you can say. The pilots lasted for 50 days. You could maybe say that it would have been maybe good to do it longer, but since we were operating in this very tight pre-commercial procurement framework, we wanted 2 pilots, we limited to approximately 2 months. Every consortium, as we saw in the videos, had a fleet of at least 2 vehicles. They operated under 4G, so there weren't any tests done with 5G in this project. Every consortium established at every pilot a remote control center. All the pilots were integrated in existing public transport route planners, and all the passengers we had, they were free of charge. So it was really not a commercial operation yet. So now that you know a bit about the kind of the framework in which we operated, let's move to the panel, to the procurers. So we're back. Hi, everyone. I'm here from the studio. You're on the screen. We talk a little bit about the technological issues from the city point of view as well. In the afternoon session, it will be the companies going into that. But we'll discuss it among us. Also a bit this process, this type of procurement. We talk about that, user acceptance, the role of the cities. So let's get started. As I mentioned in my introduction, there has not been a pilot in Porto, Carlos. Could you maybe say a little bit about why this was and if you still thought this was a useful project to be in? Carlos. I cannot hear Carlos, but maybe our technicians can. It's something on the tech side. No. While I leave maybe our tech team to solve this with Carlos, I could maybe go to some of the other colleagues. We have driven altogether, or we, the companies, amazing number of kilometers, more than 8,000 kilometers in public, like a mixed traffic, probably 10,000 by the end of the project. Maybe Fotis, for you, when you look at the technology part, what is it that stands out to you, or what is it from the side of Lamia in Greece that you noticed during the pilot?
One of the most fundamental lessons learned for us, and I feel one of the most important project results, especially during the pilot phase, is the realization that actually the technology maturity level is such that can support deployment and operations in virtually any environment. Of course, it can be complicated, it can be time-consuming, and in certain cases, semi-assisted operation may be needed, but in the end, it was feasible. I mean, Lamia is not a tech-savvy city. It's a typical medium-sized Mediterranean city. As such, the local context poses particular challenges for an AV pilot. We are facing with high temperatures, significantly high during summer days. There's no really sophisticated road infrastructure, and we are facing with some aggressive driving culture. Nevertheless, we never faced any particular significant barrier technology-wise when hosting the pilot. On the other hand, the project itself had set ambitious targets due to the PCP framework for the participating consortia, and in practice, those proved to be difficult to accomplish. In that sense, the Lamia pilot also indicated certain aspects of the technology that still need refinement and some research focus. For instance, the requirement for an onboard safety driver is still there at all times. The remote operations are not mature enough and pretty much reliant on the data connectivity, on the underlying data connectivity infrastructure. And 5G is needed at most times, which is not the de facto situation for most of the cities. Also, I could talk about the obstacle avoidance features, which are not quite there. So overall, as a general conclusion, I would say that the technology isn't quite there, but it still is mature enough to be able to support an AV pilot in almost any environment.
Thank you. Yeah, it was. That's been also exactly the aim of FABULOS and of all these different pilots, that we could test it in all these different conditions. And of course, the geographical situation in Greece and the weather conditions are so different from, for example, in Norway. Because Trond, in your pilot, there were, for example, very steep hills, and you had some other challenges. You even had 2 pilots in Gjesdal. From your point of view, technology-wise, what would you say what's kind of the readiness level?
Well, yeah, as you said, we were so lucky. We had two pilots, one in the summertime and one in the winter time, ongoing now for 2 weeks from now. When we selected the test route, we wanted to select a route that was both useful and challenging, but doable. So if it should be useful, we needed one to connect the residential area to the center. That's the first last mile thing here to get people down to the city center and a larger bus line. So of course it's steep hills here in Gjesdal. It's more than 10% incline at the most. So of course there was some issues due to the energy needed to lift the bus 87 meters, the power of the brakes and safety issues, and also issue of the angle of the sensors. But so the first pilot we had to reschedule the route a little, and the last one we managed to do it all the way up to the top. So I think also speed is a key word here. Part of the route to collect in the first mile is several hundred meters with speed limits 40 kilometers per hour. And then if you have like 800 meters with no intersections, no pedestrian crossings or something like that, and if you drive in only 18 or 20 kilometers per hour, that will be a problem for the rest of the traffic.
Yeah, because there was quite a difference, right, between the speeds of the different pilots. Why was that?
Well, the Navia shuttle only could do 18 kilometers per hour, and the last pilot with the Sensible 4, they got to drive in 30.
Yeah.
So when they go 30 in a 40 speed limit road, that's of course a small problem than the difference between 80 and 40.
But this was imposed by the road authorities, right? These speed limits, and it had to do with the different type of vehicle. The fact that Sensible 4 is using a regular van that has been retrofitted.
Yes, it's a Toyota ProAce van, so they couldn't get the passengers in the beginning, but they managed to get to drive in 30 kilometers per hour.
Yeah. Also in the Helsinki pilots here in the center of in a busy area here in Helsinki, there were also the maximum speed reach was 28 kilometers an hour, which was also allowed by the authorities. It wasn't, of course, the average speed, but at least proper speeds, which was one of the requirements, because we wanted it, to show that it can be part of the regular public transport and regular traffic. Hey, Marcel, what was it that got your attention from the technology perspective? Do the vehicles still miss some essential skills, or what do you think?
Well, yes. Also, what Fotis said, we started the project, of course, with very high ambitions and raised the bar high for innovations. And it's good to see it really worked out. The consortia created a lot of developments, which resulted in new possibilities. But indeed, we also see that some developments take longer than we maybe had expected in 2017 or 18. So yes, we are still missing some improvements. And what I noticed is, of course, the speed. However, it also differs between the type of shuttles we use, and also on the type of roads we drive. But speed is indeed something that we have to further improve. But also another example that needs to be improved is, I think, the possibility to overtake other traffic, both in the case of moving and stationary vehicles or objects. However, we have seen demonstrations that the vehicles can overtake objects. It's still quite difficult. And another point, what we also see is that vehicles cannot always communicate well with other vehicles or with other traffic. That's also something I think that has to be should be improved the coming years still.
Well, you have your pilot in Helmond still ongoing. So there's, I think they are almost as we speak, or was it this week even, still testing with the connection with traffic lights, for example, the interaction with smart traffic lights, right? So there's lots of R&D going on there, definitely at the moment. And when you look at, for example, the changes that were needed in the infrastructure, that varied a lot per pilot, right? Everywhere we needed some additional arrangements, some temporary bus stops or warning signs, or maybe temporary traffic arrangement or reduction of the speed limit. All of us had some kind of bigger or smaller infrastructure changes. In Helmond, it was clearly the most. Maybe Marcel want to continue and say a little bit about the infra changes that relates of course also to the technological development.
Yeah, exactly. Indeed, because of the shortcomings, we had to take several measures to make it as safe as possible on the route. And then you can think of several kinds of measures. So we had to set up some traffic rules. Then you can think of a parking ban or lowering speed limits on other parts of the route. We put a barrier between two lanes on a distributor road. With traffic in opposite directions, we realized a speed bump to slow down other traffic. At a specific location, we had to create more view for the sensors on cross traffic. So, overall, there were still a lot of infrastructural measures needed to get it a real safe operation.
Yeah. Was that, Johan, in Tallinn? Maybe not as much, right? In the pilot?
No, not as much. I don't think that anything much was done. Only a bit of lowering of the speed limit, and
at some parts
vehicles were good to go.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And in Helsinki, maybe it's nice to mention that we noticed that the storage and the charging is something to really take into account. We spent quite some time together with the company to find suitable parking place for the vehicles for overnight, because it turned out that many of the parking garages in the area were too low, the entrance was too low, or the ramp was too steep, using too much energy all the time. So of course that's relevant, especially in case of larger rollout of these solutions. And there's definitely some role for cities here that the routes need to be investigated in advance. And definitely. Hey, I believe that Carlos has his audio back. So Carlos, despite not having a pilot in Porto, maybe you can first explain that. Why didn't we actually have a pilot in Portugal?
Well, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Well, regarding the participation of STCP in the FABULOS project, we had two main objectives, and one of them was carried out the pilot, of course. The other was to understand if the technology was sufficiently mature to be used as a solution of public transport of passengers in the urban mode. However, STCP did not it was not possible to carry out the pilot due to a delay in regulations for AVs tests on mixed traffic. And so that was not yet possible.
But I mean, luckily now, after all the experience you got in FABULOS, then hopefully once the legislation will be in place, you'll be ready to go, right?
Yes, we have the ambition to connect our main network to less demand zones that can bring the passengers to our main network. So this is a solution. We know that one of the major costs of transport is the driver. So if we can have a solution without a driver, that is a solution to some this kind of transport to update our main transport network.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, indeed. We were ambitious in the beginning. Remember in 2018 when we wrote the functional requirements, we kind of aimed for a fully driverless field test in phase 3. We thought that maybe it would be possible by 2020, but it hasn't in the end happened in any of the pilots, partly because the technology side and the companies and kind of the safety levels, and partly because of the kind of the like legal barriers and the authorities still requiring someone on board. Before we move a little bit further to this permission process, Trond, I know that talking about infrastructure, because you in Gjesdal had one of the most sort of less urbanized, I wouldn't say rural, that might offend you, but at least the least urban pilot, right? Did you have to put any special things in place, or did you as a city have to help the companies with any infrastructure adjustments?
Well, yeah, we had to adjust the speed limits from 50 to 40 in two of the roads. Not possible to test with 50 kilometers per hour. And then we have to do some of the roads, priority roads, not yield from right. And we had to ban parking for Maria in the city center where the street was too narrow. And we also made one of the roads one-way traffic.
And it was so that for the first pilot, there had to be some landmarks placed along the route, right? Like some wooden structures.
We had some part of the route that had weak EMC signals for the navigation system, so we needed some large tables to reinforce. Make an additional navigation system.
Yeah. But luckily that wasn't now needed at the moment anymore. Hey, when we go a little bit into the permission process, because of course technology, safety, regulations from authorities, it's all very closely interlinked in these pilots. So when we talk a bit about the exemption and that process to get these pilots on the road, all companies had to go through this process to get permissions. All of us have been involved to a smaller or a larger extent. We have a dedicated session on regulatory issues. So after lunch, we talk a bit more elaborately. Maybe in short, I can now summarize that in Norway, in Estonia and in Finland, the process was quite smooth, right, Johan? I mean, in Estonia as well, it was not a very time-consuming or complicated process?
No, not at all. Yes, of course. Well, the thing being that since the road administration is under the governance of our ministry, we already had beforehand agreed upon all of the rules and procedures that are needed to do in order to register the vehicle. But that being said, I think that the consortia had actually had to do great efforts to ready their vehicles for testing, since we demanded them to comply as much as possible with the type approval regulation in there, so that we could ensure the safety of the vehicles in traffic.
Yes, we saw it also in the presentation of Pirko this morning, where he showed the first prototype shuttle and then the type approved version and the kind of lengths they have to go through. Yeah, but luckily, nevertheless, in many of the countries, it was a process of 3-4 weeks or up to maybe two months or something like that. However, in Greece and in the Netherlands, it was maybe a bit more complicated. Maybe Fotis, you first in Greece. Can you say a little bit why this was? What was the complication?
Well, getting the vehicles registered and licensed was one of the most challenging tasks for us in the project. In reality, it was only the second pilot in the country and the first in the last 5 years, and I would say the first of such scale. Overall, the process is not actually streamlined. There are no official templates or online forms for the applicant to support the whole procedure. And since the legislative framework was built back in 2015, it was quite outdated in certain aspects. So getting everything together was the most challenging part. We had to navigate different documents and different procedures to make this happen. In essence, the vehicles had to be type approved again, although they were type approved in Estonia. We have to undertake a trial period, fine-tune the pilot and the technology according to the findings of the trial period, then have the actual pilot. All this together lasted for more than 3 months before having the green light for the actual pilot. But all in all, it all went well, and most importantly, the pilot has been an excellent opportunity to raise the topic of the much-needed legislation update on a central government level. We, along with the fellow city of Trikala, we have been pivotal in this underlying procedure. We've been part of almost every discussion with the ministry. And I'm happy to say that we succeeded in getting the legislation updated. The only bad thing in this process was that it didn't happen in time for the Lamia pilot, but still.
For a future pilot, perhaps, and at least I'm sure that all the other cities in Greece will be thankful to you to kind of having paved the way. And it's great that because we were working in such a strict time window, because we knew, of course, that this project would end, and it's really great that it worked. And going to the Netherlands, Marcel, I mean, it's even more amazing for the Netherlands because that was really the most challenging process, right? From all the cities in the project, you have surely put the most effort and hours from your side. Can you summarize a little bit?
Yeah, of course, we go often a bit deeper on it, so I keep it short, but I experienced it as an extensive and thorough procedure. The vehicle authority involves specific organizations with expertise in the field of infrastructure and human factors. Also, the road authority, which is the city of Helmond itself, in our case, plays an important role in the project. Safety, of course, should always be top priority number one, and this thorough procedure really helps to mitigate all possible risks, that's for sure. And you can also see that all involved organizations have a lot of expertise. But of this extensive procedure, it's unfortunately also a very time-consuming procedure indeed. And I have to say that was also in this project quite challenging when you have two timelines. You have the timeline of the FABULOS project and our own approval procedure in the Netherlands, and that was quite challenging to manage that.
But luckily, we also got a 3-month project extension due to the COVID situation, and this this made it actually possible to still have. That's why we now still have the pilots ongoing in the Netherlands, and also the second pilot in Norway is still rolling. So everyone living in the area of Gjesdal and Helmond can go have a look. So this was a very challenging part. Something that we have all very good experiences with is the kind of the user acceptance part. We've had close to 3,000 passengers overall in all the pilots added together, despite the COVID situation. Trond, from your perspective, was there kind of overwhelming enthusiasm from the start, or how did that go?
No, it was not overwhelming from the start. In kind of a small place like Gjesdal, the first questions popping up is, do we need this, and is it safe, or is it dangerous? So I think we gained the user acceptance bit by bit. It's more than 3 years since the project started, and we were very lucky to have the press, the local newspaper, commenting and writing about the project in a positive way, all from the start. And we could open for some citizens kind of involvement service, Facebook. They could discuss this new thing, and little by little, and more people looked positive at it. And in the first pilot in the summer, Saga had with the Navia shuttle, I think 13 or 1,400 passengers. So that's quite a large success as we see it in the summertime.
Definitely, and that was definitely the largest number of passengers that any of us has had. And even though user acceptance wasn't really a core part of the project, we did do surveys, not only the users, but we also have a survey for currently open for non-users, because that's of course also interesting to hear from people who have never tried a bus, if they would be willing to take it. So there's a public acceptance study, like a summary report, that will be ready in about a month. So keep an eye out for the social media and the website of FABULOS. How was it in Estonia, Johan? Because in Tallinn, it was not the first pilot. You've had previous pilots, several of them actually. Did that make a difference, you think?
I don't really know. I mean, Estonians generally don't seem to mind new technologies. They're more curious than very often new solutions. But interesting thing about the user acceptance survey, not to spoil the results for everybody, but is that I think that most of the people chose to drive with the autonomous vehicle who would otherwise have done the journey by walking or by other means than a car. So in order for the autonomous shuttles to actually function as an integral part of the public transport service, we are still lacking in the area of speeds. So if we could improve the connection times between the last mile and the trunk lines, then the actual shuttles can become of a really useful solution and can help for the modal shift from personal vehicles to public transportation. And I think that is one thing that really came out of the user acceptance service as well. People were curious, they were fine with it, they trusted the vehicles, but in order for it to be really useful, we need to demand more speed.
Yes, exactly, and it will be interesting to see in the end survey a little bit the comparison between the different countries, if that's something that really popped out in every country. But yes, the speed, we maybe will come back to it with the companies as well in the afternoon session. And talking about users and citizens, and we talked also a little bit about the authorities already, so it's kind of a logical step to maybe go to the stakeholder involvement aspect. In general, I think in this project it has gone really well in all our 6 countries and cities, luckily. What's maybe nice to mention is that in this respect that we asked from all the companies that during the pilot or before the pilot, if they could organize a training for the emergency services in their on their particular vehicle. So, for example, the fire department and the police, that they also go through this kind of learning process on AVs, where the companies would explain about the energy systems that they use, the safety systems, how to communicate with the passengers if a vehicle would be stuck or the doors don't open or it's fallen over, whatever. So that's been something that has happened in all the cities, of which everyone has said that it's been a very useful part of the kind of stakeholder involvement. But, I mean, maybe Marcel, from your point of view, in addition to these kind of groups and citizens, and what would you say are the most crucial other stakeholders? Also, if there's other cities listening, thinking that, hey, maybe we should do a pilot sometime, or we want this kind of service, who to involve?
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing to involve a lot of stakeholders and also in time. Maybe I can distinguish some categories of stakeholders. First of all, you have the organizations that are relevant for the approval process, such as the Dutch Vehicle Authority, the Public Transport Authority, emergency services. A second group are organizations that are relevant for regional and national ambitions relating to the development and deployment of autonomous vehicles. A third group are stakeholders along the route, for example, for who the field test has consequences. You can imagine something like a parking ban. You have to inform them. A fourth group are the users that really use the road. That can be you and me that are using the road as a cyclist or a car user, but also specific users from who has an exemption for driving agricultural vehicles, for example. A fifth group are of course our citizens who are living in Helmond, and employees, visitors. And even a sixth group, a very important one, is the press. To inform them, to explain them what we are doing and why we are doing this and how it works. And maybe the last, but certainly also not the least, group is the internally group stakeholders, I would say. Many disciplines need to be involved to arrange everything in detail. You can think of the engineering department, safety and enforcement, permit department, green maintenance, legal department, etc., etc. So also that is a very important element. So I think you have maybe 6 or 7 different categories, and they are all very important to make it to a success at the end.
Yeah. Do you, Fotis, recognize that, and also that within the municipality and in Lamia that you had the different departments involved, for example, and the Greek press, for example, were they actively reporting?
Yeah. I will start from political support. I mean, this was the top, and this actually drove the whole communication activities and stakeholder engagement activities of the city. For us, it was clear from the beginning of the project that the communication and stakeholder engagement activities are important, especially when we are talking about a pilot, which means explicit operational conditions and definite duration. And as you mentioned before, under the PCP framework, the vehicles aren't bought or owned by the procurers. So there are certain levels of, temporariness. So communication messages need to be clear from the beginning. But all in all, we didn't face any particular stakeholder engagement barriers. I mean, everyone was pretty interested in the project from early on, and when we needed it, they provided their support, from the citizens to the fire department, the police department, internal departments of the municipality, actually implementing technical works on the road. Everyone was pretty in line with the process.
Yeah. Good to hear. Luckily, we had a similar situation here in Helsinki, and I think in all of our cities. Hey, I want to talk also a little bit about the pre-commercial procurement, because this is a project, a type of process where we went through, which is quite unknown innovation tool for cities and authorities. We, from the side of Forum Firim Helsinki and the city of Helsinki, had been going through this once or twice probably before. So we saw it as a very useful tool for these kind of solutions that are not yet on the market yet. For all of you, for the others, it was the first time to be in such a procurement. Maybe Johan, maybe you want to say something from your side, being the only, ministry, like kind of national level authority involved in this project. Was it still useful for you as well?
Yes, definitely. Although, yes, we are not the future procurers of such solutions. Organizations within Estonia definitely could be. And I think the most useful part of a PCP is that we can direct the development into the direction that is actually needed, so that we can demand of the companies to be more ambitious in their development and do what is necessary. Although the PCP is very useful, it is still quite a long process. I mean, right now, if we look at the COVID crisis and everybody who wishes more funds to be put into economy quickly and right now, then of course PCP is not the instrument for that, but for you have a bit more time and you really wish to support the development of certain technologies so that they could be later on adopted, then yes, PCP is great. Good
to hear. So recommendation to all the viewers out there who hadn't heard of it before. Carlos, from your point of view as a public transport operator, the process as such, was it kind of clear from you from the start, and do you see kind of similar benefits that Johan mentioned?
Well, this process for us was our first time. With the PCP process, there was an opportunity to check the state of the technology development. And as Pirkko said in the earlier session, it allows us to adjust our expectations to the state of the technology. Bearing in mind that the various competing consortia shows different approaches, some of them had the option of doing the development of the hardware and the software with new vehicles and the detection equipment, and others have chosen only develop management and control software and renting vehicles from the manufacturers. So this is I think this is a flexible process that allow us to have adjustments along the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. It's been very sort of agile process in a way, even though of course we developed our functional requirements in the beginning of the project, and I think that's maybe at the same time I mean, it's a positive point from pre-commercial procurement that you set down your requirements for the companies in an early stage. So it's kind of the expectations are clear, but then these are more or less written in stone for a period of 3 years, whereas some technologies go faster, some maybe go not as fast as you had hoped. So yeah, there's maybe some limitations as well. I don't know, Fotis, from your point of view, any points that weren't mentioned yet that you'd like to say as kind of drawbacks or positives?
Yeah, I will start that, by saying that EU-funded innovation procurement, it's an excellent opportunity to make the respective solutions accessible to everyone. I will start from that because, the AV services for public transportation are on the expensive end, perhaps outside the budgetary capabilities of cities. So EU-funded innovation procurement is a good opportunity to move to the next step. Also, the PCP methodology was an important step to make everyone involved familiar with all possible aspects of an AV service, which means that proceeding now with the commercialization phase is pretty much more straightforward than before. I mean, especially when we are talking about prototypes which are not yet market-ready solutions. In a simplistic way, but in a concrete way, I would say that the PCP experience has been really fruitful and useful.
Thank you. Yeah. Yes, I agree with you. And it's maybe good to still emphasize, I didn't mention it when I showed the slide of the PCP process, that at the end of the project, these are still prototype solutions, as you mentioned. They are prototype solutions that are now being tested. It's not a kind of ready and done thing. The companies are expected to commercialize it. They have a certain period of time for it. I think actually it's normally in PCP it's said that there would be a couple of years time, 3 years or 4 years time to commercialize the solution, bring it to the market. But of course, we already heard in this morning's presentations of the companies that that this might happen actually faster than that, luckily. But yeah, now we go to kind of to phase X in a way. Maybe Marcel, well, we get to that also when we speak in the very last session of the day a bit about PPI and PCP. But are there any maybe additions to this discussion from your point of view?
Yeah, well, it's a great way to meet all relevant experts in the field. So that is very important, and we learned very much from all those experts, and we know exactly what is the current state of the art, and that is important also for the next steps we want to do, the real deployment. So. It's good to be in that world together with all those experts.
It is. Hey, and I don't know if anyone mentioned it already, but let's not forget, of course, the funding. This has been an EU-funded project. Of course, this has also been a very big incentive. It's a 90% EU-funded project. We had a total budget of around 8 million, of which approximately 5 million euros earmarked for the companies for their R&D budget. Of course, it would have been a different story if all of us would have had to pay everything from our own pockets. It would probably not have happened. So it's really a tool from the European Commission to stimulate innovation, and I think that has worked particularly well in FABULOS. We actually also won runner-up place for the ICT Innovation Procurement Award last year. So we're proud of that, and it's a nice acknowledgement. Maybe as a last topic, one of the last topics. Let's see how much time we still have. The role of cities and of public transport operators as well, of course. Any advice on that, Carlos? Could you say something about that? What would be the role of a PTO for?
Well, between the current situation of using the actual means, such as standard or even minibuses with a driver, to a complete autonomous transport solution without a user of controller inside of the vehicle, I think that's still a long way to go. But this can be overcome through some intermediate compromise situations, either by intervention in the road infrastructure to adapt them to more favorable conditions to AVs. In alternative, we can have a presence of transport promotion agents, like I like to say, who can be who can have the supervision functions of the vehicle and can promote the AV solution to the passengers. This I think another to reduction passenger distrust in traveling in a vehicle without a driver. When a new passenger comes in the vehicle and don't see anybody doing the control of the driver, I think it's a little bit I don't know, not trusty.
Yeah.
So in the beginning, I think presence of someone from the company who can promote and explain what this kind of solution is. It's a positive choice.
Yeah. So a good, big role in good communication as well, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, Trond, do you have anything from the side of Vestal, or if you're thinking about kind of the role of cities, or kind of any advice you would have for cities considering either a pilot or a deployment or a procurement? Is there something you have on your mind that you could recommend to them?
Well, message to all the small and medium-sized cities: don't let only the large cities steer the direction of the future. Dare to try something new and set the ambitions high, is my advice.
Yeah, good. Well, that's a good, nice advice for the smaller and medium-sized cities. How about you, Fotis?
I wouldn't have anything else important to add other than, the goal is to someday have a turnkey solution. There is some road yet to cover until we are there. So until then, the role of the cities are important in the process. They have to be involved and get their hands dirty with the process, and really support the suppliers in getting everything ready. So I would say that cities remain pretty much relevant in the whole process. Europe is also scattered with medium-sized cities, so cities like Lamia should be in the front. I would say that the role of the cities is more relevant than ever in the sector.
That's a good message. I think we have quite many cities listening to us today, so that's a good message. Marcel, you probably have a few more additions.
Yeah, I could think of several roles. At least for the Dutch case, it's important to understand that you as a city really have two roles. One as let's say project member, one as the local road authority with formal responsibilities in the procedure. Another important role is what I mentioned already before, is the involvement of all the stakeholders. I think there's an important role also for the city. And of course, the infrastructure part. We are, as a road authority, can help make it possible in existing situations, but also in new areas we are developing, already start taking into account what is necessary for those new generation vehicles that are coming to the market.
Yeah, so get your city planners on board, and whenever you develop a new neighborhood, think of where should these type of new innovation solutions, where should they charge, where should they be stored, how do they fit into an actual new neighborhood, and yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, yes. Yeah, I very much agree. How about you, Johan? You probably have some nice last words, but we're going slowly towards the end. But you probably still have something to add.
Difficult to think of anything really new, but maybe the advice would be that you, for the cities, to think of a real challenge, to see what has been done and what hasn't been done, and then of course strive for something that hasn't been yet done, to test out your legal framework and test the vehicles and so forth. So be innovative and be courageous.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that. Indeed, that kind of don't reinvent the wheel and be ambitious, and on the one hand push the market, so to say. I think that the company should provide what the cities really need. I mean, that's also FABULOS, has also really been a needs-based project. We started with what is it actually that cities want, and then we asked the companies to develop that. But also for cities maybe join together to push the national road authorities or the legislators. If you speak with, together with one voice, your voice will be stronger. Because I think, they should help and enable cities to test innovations in real life circumstances. So the legal framework should be there, and hopefully cities can influence that as well to a certain extent. Yeah, and maybe also reflecting what you said, I would think that, get help as well. Don't try to do everything alone, but in relation to the permission processes, that you hire specific expertise, consultants, or anyone who has done it before, or maybe other cities in your country that have had a pilot already. They can be such a source of information, and also there's so much existing material already. There are these kind of start your own pilot type of toolboxes for cities. There are other reports done by previous projects, and also of course we will have some more elaborate recommendations for cities by the end of March, when our project officially ends, via the FABULOS.eu website. So definitely, I would say there's definitely room for cities. So we are going to talk in the very last session on the day a little bit on the sort of what's next with some other procurers. Marcel will be in that panel, but the rest of you won't be. So maybe we do still a small round. Maybe we leave Marcel for the afternoon, but like the what's next, are you considering an actual procurement, another pilot, more research? Fotis in Lamia, what are the thoughts now on the next step?
The project was just a step. This is how we see it. We actually initiated discussions with our consortium, with which we were matched in the FABULOS project, for next steps, for the next pilot. We have the law in our side now, but we won't stop there. We also are active in other EU-funded innovation procurement proposals. So, yeah, I would say that the FABULOS PCP was just the first step in this process. We see ourselves involved in other projects in the near future, and why not commercial ones as well.
Yeah, that's interesting, and especially, of course, once something will be operated as a commercial service, there are other rules and regulations yet again, so it gets one step more complicated. But that's something that kind of also a next step we need to prepare for. But yeah, thanks for this. I hope that this will be really the springboard for a wider rollout there in your neighborhood. How about you, Trond? Can you say something about possible next steps for Gjesdal? We heard your mayor already very nicely, very ambitiously stating something.
Yeah, we didn't decide on that yet. I think we have to evaluate the FABULOS project, what we got out of it, and where we stand. We of course want to procure some buses in this direction to the last mile, but when the time is ready, we're not quite sure. We have to evaluate a little first and then decide on the next steps.
To be continued, yes. Yeah, okay, nice. And I mean, there's other, in other parts of Norway, other pilots also ongoing, so it's also probably interesting to follow the progress there again. Hey, Carlos, in Spain, we actually have a question from the audience specifically for you. Did you have any reaction of the STCP bus drivers on the pilot that you? I mean, of course, you didn't in the end have the pilot, but you had the plans and the wishes for this. Have you had any reactions from the side of the unions or the bus drivers? Anything you can share?
Well, not yet, but this is something we are concerned about. Because it's a problem. But we can say that this kind of solution is not in conflict with our normal service. Our drivers are their jobs in our normal service, in our main network. We think of this in proximity solutions with lower demand and where in addition to our network. So we think this is not a big problem for the drivers because this is an addition to. We think this as an addition to our solution.
Yeah, complementary to the existing services.
Yes,
and I can imagine that once because the legislation process. It's changing at the moment, right? So by the time that hopefully soon it will be actually allowed to carry out these kind of pilots, I'm sure you will do extensive survey and research as well on the reactions of those kind of groups. Yeah, thank you. Thanks. I have Johan, because the kind of the what's next question doesn't maybe apply so much for you as a ministry. I have maybe a question from you from the audience. There's a question that, do you think that PCP could be used to take solutions which are like 50 to 75% ready and get them kind of over the line? So with the expectation being multiple suppliers jointly developing common standards before launching interoperable services. So anyway, can you do a PCP process with a kind of only 50% ready service or product?
I don't really know. It's very difficult to answer. I suppose generally it could be doable, yes, but it very very much depends on the field and of the technology.
Yeah.
I think that it would be very difficult to completely innovate from I don't know, in the energy sector, for example. In that sector, I suppose that many of the solutions are 75-80% anyway ready. But if there are any solutions that are very immature, maybe it is possible, but maybe 3 years is still not enough time to do that.
True. I agree with you that it depends very much on the the type of product or service. We have at Forum Verium another PCP project running on, it's called AI for cities. So it's very specifically AI solutions that help to reduce CO2 emissions in the transport and in the energy sector. So that's maybe an example of a service or a product that could actually be developed within that kind of time span. But also, if you look at the robot buses, it's well, of course, we heard Harry from Sensible 4 also say in his presentation that that Sensible 4 started more or less at the same time as FABULOS started, well, a little bit before. And they had already, of course, it wasn't started from scratch, but still. The idea of PCP is in any case that there's a really fast and thorough R&D process and development process. Difficult question, Andy, but so it depends on the product or the service. Hey, listen, we are nearing the end of our session. So I think that I will wrap it up. I will say thank you very, very much for my dear colleagues, for the great team, for not only for this event and this session, but even for the past 3 years that we've worked together. It's been a great ride. We have to finish now. Lots of information. Of course, we couldn't really squeeze everything in this few hours. So for the audience, keep an eye out also on the website and social media for publications, etc. in the next month. At least I think that with FABULOS and the 6 of us, we know that we are better prepared now for a future where autonomous mobility will be the norm, right? Aren't we better prepared? Yeah, we are.
Yes.
Yes. So we say goodbye to the panel.